Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into some teachings that have, for 2,000 years, challenged empires and completely changed people's hearts. We're going to be looking at this through the lens of Pastor Shinji Nakayama's radio messages to really unpack the radical wisdom in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount.
All right, let's just jump right in with what Pastor Nakayama calls a shocking statement. And honestly, it is. It's a command that goes against every single instinct we have for, protecting ourselves and seeing justice done.
You see, this isn't just a nice little suggestion for how to behave. It's a full-on challenge to how we even think about justice itself.
This slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? Our whole culture, think about it, from ancient stories to the movies we watch today, it's all built on this idea of poetic justice. In Japanese, it's called kanzen choaku. The good guys have to punish the bad guys. We're literally conditioned to cheer when the hero finally gets their revenge. But then the Sermon on the Mount comes along and suggests a totally different way. And man, is it a tougher path.
It's a fair question, though. Does this kind of radical nonviolence actually work in the real world, outside of a book? Well, according to Pastor Nakayama, the answer is a huge, resounding yes.
Just think about some of the biggest social changes in recent history. Pastor Nakayama brings up giants like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. These guys didn't just stumble upon this idea, they built their entire movements on this very principle. They got that not hitting back wasn't weakness. No, it was this incredibly powerful way to just stop the cycle of violence, to speak to the humanity of the people they were up against. And in the end, they literally changed the world.
And just when you think it can't get any harder, the teaching goes beyond just not fighting back. It calls for something active, to actually love your enemies. Wow. That idea flies directly in the face of our most basic instincts to protect our own tribe and see the other side as the bad guy. And Pastor Nakayama shares this really personal story about this. When he was in middle school, there was this kid who just relentlessly bullied him. So he decided to take this teaching seriously and started praying for that bully every single day. Now, did the bullying stop right away? No. But he says something else happened, a different kind of miracle. The prayer protected his heart. It kept him from being eaten up by hate and bitterness.
And that idea of protecting your own heart leads us straight into the next big theme, moving our focus from what we do on the outside to what's really going on inside. So the sermon then kind of turns the camera inward and asks a question that, let's be honest, we all have to deal with. When we do something good, why are we really doing it?
What a great metaphor, right? It's totally natural to want a little pat on the back when we do something nice. But this teaching warns that the second our main reason for doing it is to get that praise, the good deed itself gets kinda tainted.
So here's the thing. The moment we do good stuff mainly to look good, the whole reason for doing it changes. It's not about loving other people anymore. It's about a kind of self-love, or what the source calls vanity. And that's pretty much the definition of hypocrisy. So this teaching is all about getting back to the real reason, acting out of genuine care, whether there's an audience or not.
This whole theme of having pure inner motives flows right into something really personal, the act of prayer. Pastor Nakayama tells this story about a man who was in the hospital. One day, he just happened to look into the hospital chapel, and he saw a woman praying. She was completely by herself, totally lost in the moment, and had no idea he was even there. He said he was just so struck by how real it was. He knew he wasn't watching a performance. He was seeing a real, private conversation. And what's so great about this is how down-to-earth the advice is. In our crazy, noisy world, with notifications going off all the time, you don't need a special building to create a space for this kind of connection. It can be as simple as this. Turn off the TV, silence your phone, clear a little spot on your desk, and just create a moment of quiet. That's it. And this really gets to the core of what the sermon teaches about prayer. See, the point isn't to give God a list of our problems like we're filling out a request form. It's more about building a relationship of trust, just resting in the idea that God already knows what we really need.
All right, so finally, we get to what is maybe the biggest, most difficult goal in the entire sermon.
Okay, that just sounds impossible, doesn't it? How could any person ever be perfect?
Well, the key here is what perfect actually means in this context. Pastor Nakayama points out that it's not about never making a mistake, like getting a perfect score on a test. It's more like aiming your whole life in a specific direction, pointing yourself toward this perfect ideal, the character of God Himself, which is described as being complete in love and righteousness and holiness. And as you can see here, the source is really realistic about the huge gap between our day-to-day reality and that divine ideal. The Apostle Paul himself talked about how we're naturally often selfish and arrogant, which is a pretty stark contrast to that patient, selfless love we're supposed to be aiming for.
So in the end, the teaching concludes that you can't close that gap just by trying really, really hard. It's presented as a journey of faith, one where you admit you're weak and instead rely on a Savior, Jesus, who is said to have come to rescue us from these exact failings. So when you boil it all down, you're left with these core principles that just flip our normal way of thinking on its head. It's a call for a massive shift, moving our attention from how we react on the outside to what's going on in our hearts and what we're aiming for in the long run.
And that's our look at these radical teachings. So the final question really isn't some deep theological debate. It's super practical. It's for you. What if you took just one of these ideas and tried to live it out today? How would that actually change how you talk to people at work, or your family, or, even how you are online?